The setting sun painted the plain in copper light. Dust, baked bone white all day, spiraled on every gust to cling to the weather-furrowed faces of the cattlemen. Nervous whinnies tangled with the rough-throated bawls of livestock traders, while the mixed reek of leather, sweat, and cheap whiskey thickened the scorching air. The season's last auction was sputtering to its end. A few cows remained, one unruly mule, and, apart beside a rust-flecked corral gate, a gaunt bay mare whose ribs jutted like railroad ties. Silas Kerrigan, 35, a not-lean silhouette carved by prairie wind, had kept to the edges all day, hat brim pulled low, jaw clamped like a lockbox. He disliked crowds, town even more, but he needed a sound horse for the coming winter. When the bidding petered out and the bustle drained away, he stepped forward, boot heels cracking against the packed earth. That was when he saw her. In the corral shade stood a girl of barely 19, bare feet chalked with dust. Dark strands of tangled hair clung to her temples. Her dress, ripped at the hem, showed thin ankles and fading bruises. Tied to her wrist was a length of rope that ran to the hand of a staggering, slack-bellied man whose every step made the half-empty bottle he brandished clink like a trophy. "Look here. A mute one. Deaf too, I'll wager. No chatter, no sass. She cooks, she cleans, never gripes. Who wants her? I'll throw her in with the mare. Friendly price," the drunk bellowed, a greasy grin on his lips. A few onlookers let out coarse laughter. One spat a rope of brown tobacco juice at his feet. Silas, disgusted, was about to turn away when he met the girl's eyes. No plea there, not even fear, only a strange, piercing clarity, a mirror of the desert loneliness he carried inside. The silent frankness struck him like a slow bullet. "How much?" he muttered. The bargain was swift, a fistful of dollars, the clink of coins in a pouch, then the rasp of rope as Silas tore it free. The gawkers jeered. "Hey, Kerrigan, starting yourself a harem, are you?" Silas did not answer. He led the mare from the pen, the girl following lightly, like a faithful shadow. At the wagon, she waited for him to lower the tailboard. Wordless, she slipped into a corner, knees drawn up, gaze fixed on the mauve hills in the distance. Before he climbed to the seat, her calloused fingers brushed his coat sleeve, just a butterfly's touch, yet enough to seal a tacit vow, one soul's trust in another. Silas snapped the reins, and the dust swallowed the town. Night fell quickly, a velvet dark spangled with sparks of stars. The road wound through mesquite toward the modest farm. A sag-roofed house, 2 rickety barns, 200 acres of red earth-breathing isolation. On arrival, the mute stranger swept the land with her eyes. No fear, only the watchfulness of a wren. In the kitchen, Silas coaxed the coals to life and slid the coffee pot onto the grate. He set a piece of chalk before her and tapped the doorframe softly. "Your name?" She studied the chalk a long moment, then wrote on the wood in slightly leaning letters, "Emmeline." Silas repeated it under his breath, tasting the uncommon sound. She inclined her head, enigmatic, and disappeared toward the stable. Next dawn, Silas found her kneeling in the dim stall, hands laid on the injured mare's flank. No superfluous caress, rather a tactile listening, almost sacred. The usually skittish animal stood still, drawing each breath wide, as if it knew it was being healed. Silas, astonished, held back. The deaf girl understood beasts better than any cowboy he'd met. After that, they formed a silent ballet. Emmeline swept floors, tended the fire, sorted the drying herbs under the eaves. Each evening, on a scrap of board, she wrote sibylline notes. Wind carries drought, dog limps, check paw, storm before midnight. Silas read them, pondered, and found himself waiting for those messages the way others wait for prayer. A copper dusk foretold the storm. Silas was mending the calf pen when Emmeline raced in, barefoot, gasping. Her fingers seized his sleeve, eyes begging without a sound. He started to ask. She pointed skyward where inky clouds already massed. A minute later, lightning split the tree behind a shed. A titanic crack, incandescent shards, a roar like world's end. Dazed, Silas realized she had dragged him clear of the killing strike. How had she known? That night by the hearth there was no chalk, no questions. Silas felt beneath the table the nearness of a reality he could not name. Emmeline heard, but otherwise, through tension in the air, the secret cadence of the soil, the hidden music of the living. Their uncanny harmony did not escape the neighbors. Whispers, gossip, that gut-deep fear of what folk don't understand. Soon she was blamed for misfortunes. A nanny goat miscarried, an old steer found stiff. Someone had to be guilty. At the general store, they turned their backs. A few spat at her feet. Emmeline stood tall, but Silas saw her fingers whiten on her basket. When 8 neighbors arrived, torches unlit yet brandished like verdicts, he stepped outside the barn door. 3-day stubble and steel eyes set the scene. They meant to drive her off. He answered in a voice calmer than dawn. She's the one who hears me when I say nothing. If that's a crime, you'll have to condemn me with her. Silence dropped, heavy as a lid. The torches went away unused. That night, Emmeline set a steaming mug of cider before Silas and brushed his hand. Recognition and a promise. Snow draped the plain in white hush. Emmeline repurposed an old coat to sew him a fur-lined cape. He watched, amazed by each precise motion, by the tiny crease between her brows when the needle balked. In return, he taught her rudiments of finger spelling. Water, thanks, horse. His clumsy hands made her smile, a rare smile worth a red river sunrise. A riding fall nearly cost him an arm. Emmeline, drained of fright, yet driven by fierce resolve. Herbal poultices, warm compresses, and a feather-like kiss at the wound's edge that shook his whole world. By the fire's glow he wrote, I want to hear your heart if you'll let mine listen. She traced each word as one gently touches a scar, lifted luminous eyes, and gave him her first true smile, wide, brilliant, irreversible. Little by little, the rumor reversed itself. Tom Weaver came first, his shoulder badly torn. Emmeline wrapped it, massaging gently until she felt the exact pop of bone sliding back into place. An insomniac widow finally found sleep under her roof. A missing child was located thanks to her palms pressed to the frozen ground, following an invisible thread of human tracks. People began calling her the one who listens with her heart. The more superstitious still lowered their voices, but they brought jams and quilts all the same. Time passed, not in days, but in corn harvests. Foals dropped, storms soothed by a single calming gesture. Silas built a bench beneath the old hackberry tree. Each evening they sipped steaming tea there, and sometimes he took out his harmonica while Emmeline, eyes closed, sensed the vibrations ripple through the air like a creek. One summer night she spoke, a broken, imperfect whisper freighted with all her guarded love. I don't need sound, only you. Silas, throat tight, answered. I've heard you since the first glance. The wind carried off the rest. Village children came to learn how to listen, to feel a rabbit's fear in the twitch of its whiskers, to spot a foal's impatience in the shiver of its shoulder. Emmeline taught without words. Silas interpreted now and then, but more often he simply watched that subtle choreography where every silence became a sentence. Seasons rolled on. Silver streaked Emmeline's hair. Silas's stride grew slower. They no longer counted years. Only sunsets, goose migrations, and the bursts of laughter of a child made well again. One lilac evening, they climbed the hill overlooking the ranch. The mare Emmeline had saved so many years before grazed nearby, a foal at her side. Under the vast Texas sky dome, Emmeline let out a laugh. A fragile murmur, so clear it seemed to vibrate, even in the stone's hearts. Silas pressed a kiss to her temple. No one would ever need to tell their story. It would go on germinating silently in every soul that might one day learn to listen without hearing, to speak without words, to love without noise. And if your own silences long to be understood, if you believe the deepest language pulses beneath the skin rather than between the lips, then somewhere inside you already echoes the ranch of Silas and Emmeline. May you, in turn, find someone who can hear the secret beat you keep hidden. For beyond wind, prejudice, and time, there is a music only brave hearts can perceive, a music strong enough to make even silence dance. When the blizzard finally melted and lupin blooms dotted the hillsides, a new rumble slid across the horizon. Not storm, not cattle herd, but the steady hammering of surveyors from the Central and Pacific Railroad. One morning Silas spotted 3 felt-hatted figures, notebooks under their arms, measuring the prairie beyond the north fence. Rumor had circulated for months. The rails would swing toward the Mexican border, swallowing everything in their path. In the coffee-steamed kitchen, Silas spread a crumpled map on the table. Emmeline, gray shawl draped over her arms, brushed a finger along the red line the engineers had drawn, an unyielding slash that cut their land like a knife. She raised eyes that shone with both resolve and worry. Not without a fight, he signed trembling fingers, never at ease with the alphabet, but determined every word should pass through his hands. She nodded, then chalked on the slate, "Listen first. Understand. Find a flaw." Silas exhaled, relieved to see her treat the threat as she treated all others, with patience and the sense of an undercurrent no one else detected. 2 days later, a dust-spattered carriage stopped at the gate. Down stepped a lean man, neat beard, black wool suit powdered red. James Braddock, chief engineer, come to negotiate. Silas went out first. Braddock spoke of progress, of an America moving at the speed of steam, of generous offers for slices of ranch. At every point Silas answered with a flat, metallic no. Tempers rose. Braddock produced a sealed paper, potential condemnation. Silas's fists knotted. Then Emmeline appeared on the porch, calm as dawn without wind. Braddock greeted her distractedly, ready to continue. But Emmeline advanced, palms open. She offered him a bowl of well water, cold and clear, then skimmed a fingertip across the map. With a bit of chalk she penciled a slight curve, angling the track a few acres toward a dry riverbed. Braddock frowned. "You're proposing a detour? That'll cost thousands and lengthen the line." Emmeline didn't answer. Her palms rested on the folding table with the way one finds a horse's heart. She tapped softly, boom, 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 the deep rhythm of trains at full tilt. Then her fingers slid to the marshy zone she'd spared. On the wood came a sharp crack, eerily like beams splintering under weight. Braddock paled. Realizing the warning, he checked his notes. The topo surveys indeed mentioned unstable subsoil. A preventive curve would avert collapse. He looked up, suddenly less certain. "How did you know?" Silas allowed a thin smile. "She hears the earth better than your seismographs." The engineer did not laugh. 3 days later, a telegram confirmed the line would follow the new bend. The ranch was saved. The next summer was brutal. Not a drop of rain for 9 weeks. Pastures yellowed, wells shrank to a trickle. One evening Silas found Emmeline leaning against the cistern, hand on the scorching metal, as though taking the pulse of the parched land. She wrote, "We must dig deeper by the big willow." Silas doubted. He remembered nothing but shale down there. Yet he trusted. They labored 10 straight days, pick after pick, beneath a sand-whipping wind. On the 11th morning the earth exhaled a scent of forgotten freshness. A dark trickle came, then a clear vein. Water spurted in clay-colored splashes. A new well, a salvation. Splattered, Silas burst into laughter. Emmeline, face streaked with dust, lifted her eyes to the torpid sky and smiled. They drank from their cupped palms, tasting life running through their veins as surely as their silent love. Autumn delivered an unexpected miracle. In the roar of a storm, an exhausted woman pounded on their door, clutching a feverish infant to her chest. Her wagon had overturned, her husband lying gravely injured 2 miles away. Emmeline and Silas mounted their horses, braving the lightning. They found the man, his leg crushed beneath the axle, fading in and out of consciousness. Emmeline improvised a splint while Silas heaved him into the wagon. Rain lashed so hard it stole their breath. Safe by the hearth, Emmeline pressed the baby against her own heart to still his cries. Soon the child stopped trembling, as though the beat of her chest replaced every lullaby in the world. The mother, Clara Hollis, bargained away her last hope. "Take him, if I don't make it. Let him live somewhere people know how to listen to life." The recovery was long, yet the Hollises survived. On departure day, Clara laid the child, named Thomas, into Emmeline's arms. "We'll come for him when we have a home. Keep him till then. Teach him to hear what no one else does." Silas watched Emmeline hug the baby close, eyes damp with a new emotion. In that tiny sleeping body, he already heard the heartbeat of an enlarged future. Seasons slipped by. The boy grew to the rhythm of the ranch. It didn't take long for him to realize Emmeline spoke with her hands and eyes. Patiently, Silas taught him shoeing and cattle work. Emmeline taught him the liturgy of rustlings, how to sense a snake's approach in the quiver of grass, how to read a calf's distress in a tremor of air. One winter night, snow needling the window, 6-year-old Thomas formed his first clumsy sign. His fingers sketched a heart in the air, which he pointed at Emmeline, then at himself. Silent tears streamed down her cheeks as she wrapped him in an embrace. Silas turned away, his own eyes misted. That same month, a letter arrived. The Hollis family had settled in Colorado, but tuberculosis had taken Clara. Her bedridden husband, hands shaking, wrote, "Keep my son. He's where he belongs." Silas read the letter by the fire. Emmeline, cradling sleeping Thomas, let fall a single tear, clear as aloe sap. The years that followed forged Thomas in his guardian's speaking silence. Rails whistled at dawn far away, yet never drowned the ranch's quiet song. Emmeline's reputation spread. Folks now called her the Wind Watcher. Women dragged chairs beneath her linden tree, so she could lay a hand on their rounded bellies and calm them with a single caress. Men came, brows knotted, to ask if the drought would soon break. She seldom answered with signs. More often her silence sufficed. One evening, while Halley's comet knifed the sky like silver, 1910 loomed, refashioning America. Silas, hair salt and pepper, shoulders stooped, felt a sharp pain slice his chest. He clutched the doorframe, breaths ragged. Emmeline rushed in, pressing her ear, no, her soul, against his ribcage, searching for the heart she knew better than her own. She signed, "Rest." He shook his head. "Not yet. The world hasn't finished hearing you." That night he dreamed of endless plains and a small crowd of kindly ghosts. His father, Clara Hollis, even the drunk from the market, smiling at him in peace. By morning he had aged 10 years. Calm and steady, Emmeline took the ranch's reins, backed by Thomas, now a sturdy teenager with an honest gaze. When Silas sensed his time ebbing, he asked for the slate and scrawled, "The ranch is yours, Emmeline, yours and our sons. Promise me you'll keep the listening alive." She wrapped her fingers around his, raised them to her lips, a gesture she had reserved until then for wounded animals and feverish children. Then, very slowly, she shaped the words she had spent a lifetime learning. "I promise." He smiled, closed his eyes. The wind swept over the roof in a long sigh, as if carrying that weary soul toward endless pastureland. Emmeline remained there, brow against his shoulder, until the silence grew eternal. The funeral was simple, Neighbors who once trembled came to lay chains of wildflowers. Emmeline dug the first spadeful, Thomas the last. They stacked flat stones into a cairn, and Emmeline slipped beneath the soil one of the white chalks that had long ago spelled "Bacon Low," a symbol of a dialogue never broken. Months passed. Grief stayed, yet like a river beneath ice, it kept singing, Silas's love infusing every corner of the ranch. Now mistress in her own right, Emmeline guided with gentleness and resolve. Colts moved like dancers under her hand. Thomas, grown to manhood, drew loops across the sky with his lariat, laughing the same laugh as his adoptive father. One spring he brought home a village schoolteacher, Abigail Morse, eyes the hue of gentian. When he introduced her to Emmeline, the older woman clasped Abigail's hands, held them for a long time, then smiled, as if she had heard the secret song binding the two. Later, Thomas whispered to his mother, lips near her ear, "She wants to learn to listen, too." Decades later, a solitary traveler followed the old railbed, stopping at the site of a ranch with tidy fences and barns full of life. People told him of Emmeline, the ocean-eyed elder who could predict a calving to the minute, of Silas, long gone, whose fields still breathed patience, of Thomas, healer of beasts, and Abigail, who taught children to read and to relish silence. "What's their secret?" he asked. A shy little girl, hand trembling, pressed a palm to her chest. "They listen here," she said. "And they listen here, too." Her hand brushed the ground. The wind lifted her hair as though in assent. In the distance, beneath a glowing red sky, Emmeline, now nearly bent with years yet eyes bright as on the first day, stood at the meadow's edge. She saw the traveler and raised an arm in gentle welcome. Not a word, just a quiet invitation. "Come in, you who seek to hear." Had the stranger known how to read lips, he would have caught the silent phrase behind her smile, an unbreakable legacy of the Kerrigan Ranch. Here, even silence has a voice. Listen, and it will tell you all that the world lets fall between its noises. May the warm Texas dust travel with you wherever you go. May it whisper beneath your steps the stories of Silas, of Emmeline, and of all those who have learned that listening is sometimes the greatest act of love.